Welcome to Architects of Imagination, a game dev podcast where we talk to the brilliant minds behind your favorite video games. It is my great pleasure to introduce my friend Mike Arkin.
Hello, thank you for having me.
All right, let's do this. So why don't we start out with just kind of give us an intro. Tell us about yourself, where you're working now, how and then sort of go on a little rant about how you got started. What was your first game? How did you get into game dev?
Right. So, hi, I'm Mike. I run a studio called Big Boat, and we are technically we're in Dallas, Texas, but we don't have an office. So, this is my office in my house, and we have people all around the world in different places doing different things. So, how did I get started? Uh, it's like a crazy story. I worked at Acclaim in 1987, and I like literally walked into their office and said, "Can you hire me?" And strangely, they said yes.
Awesome.
So I don't think it works like that anymore. Um, so I wouldn't try that, but I do. There is that story about the guy in the stormtrooper outfit who did something very similar at
Huh.
Epic. But I wasn't wearing a stormtrooper outfit. I just was, in like jeans and a t-shirt probably had holes in it. So, but they were like five people, and they were like, "Can you play video games?" And I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "We need that." So, like, come on in. So it was just the right place at the right time, I guess.
Hell yeah.
Uh,
And tell us about some of the games that you've made throughout your career.
yeah, I mean, at Acclaim, I did all the Simpsons games and all the WWF wrestling. I call it WWF because that's what it was called back then, right?
Yeah.
Like now it's WWE, but I don't buy into that. It's still WWF to me. Um,
Are you WWE denier?
it's like that. Like, who are those people with that panda? Um,
It's a
I just for
statement in the
for a long
marketplace.
time I just thought there was a panda wrestling. So, and that's probably WWF is probably if one of if not the first games that I worked on. So when I was at Acclaim, we did WWF WrestleMania, and the developer was Rare, who were like good but not famous yet at that point.
Yeah, out of England, right?
Yeah, they were in like a farmhouse in like the countryside of England, and that was like by today's standards, it was probably a really crappy game, but it was the first wrestling game, so it was cool.
It was an arcade stand up, right?
No, that came like 5 years later.
Oh, okay.
It
What
was
was
NES.
NES? Gotcha.
So it was like, probably fairly primitive. It was just like two guys in the ring and maybe a referee.
Yeah.
Um, and, I also worked on, yeah, like I said, all the Simpsons games, a bunch of Terminator 2 games, and some Marvel stuff like X-Men, Spider-Man, uh, and like just a bunch of other stuff. Like, Acclaim made a lot of games.
Yeah.
So if you were there, you were a producer at Acclaim, you would just have like five or six games at once, and then each one of those might be on like NES, SNES, Game Gear, Master System. You might usually have like four or five SKUs of a particular game. So
Yeah.
it was pretty busy. It was fun.
What what is what is Acclaim up to these days? And I'm sorry if this is ignorant. Are they still around? Did they get bought?
No, they went bankrupt. I want to say like late, no, early 2000s. They went bankrupt. So I mean, like, my take on it was when I was there, Acclaim was all about marketing. So it was really marketing first, gameplay last. And so they did a lot of like, it was everything had a license, whether it was TV, comics, Mary Kate and Ashley, whatever it was. And then they'd make really cheap, crappy games. And I think that worked really well, like in 1989, because NES games sold like hotcakes. And you would basically sell
Yeah.
4 or 5 million copies of everything. and but then as the years went by and it was SNES and like PlayStation 1, gamers got a lot more. Well, like suddenly there were magazines and the internet, and gamers got a little bit more savvy. And then, in the early days, maybe your mom or grandma would buy you games, and
Yeah.
she'd go, "Oh, like Rambo, I know that. He probably loves Rambo." And you
Yeah.
get the Rambo game.
Yeah.
And then, but years later, the gamers are like buying their own games, and now they want to buy good games. And Acclaim didn't do that a lot. And I think maybe a little
Yeah.
bit of that hubris eventually just it didn't work anymore. So
Yeah.
so they went bankrupt, and then they sold the name to I forgot his name, one of the founders of Activision, not Bobby, but the other one, Howard Marks.
Okay.
And so he ran a company out of LA that was taking old, basically like Chinese MMOs, and like rebranding them, and that was Acclaim for a few years at least.
Huh. Rebannering them for Western markets?
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
And then and none of that worked out. So I think somebody has the name now. The whole appeal of the name was that it was alphabetically very very high.
Right.
So no, there's this true
Right.
story was that a bunch of guys came out of Activision in like the 80s, and they started these other companies, and they all tried to like get higher alphabetically than Activision. So there was Accolade, Acclaim, Absolute. I guess Absolute won because it was AB,
Right.
and and they all knew each other, right? And it was all just one-upsmanship on the alphabetical sorting. And I can't believe nobody made Aardvark games.
Right. I mean, there probably is one.
I mean, I had to go trademark that right now and start it.
Yeah, before this airs. Hurry up. um, Looking at your credits too, there were some other names that I recognize, some of which I've been a massive fan of. Narc, the Die Hard, Battlezone, Heads Up, Bioshock 2.
It did not work on Bioshock 2. There's a different Mike Arkin in the game industry.
Oh, okay, that's
His
some.
credits always like leak into mine, and he was like, I think he's a voice actor,
Okay,
um,
interesting.
and he's in a bunch of like Rockstar games. But Narc was really cool. I mean, that was like port of the arcade machine,
Okay.
and we had this deal with Williams that basically was like we had access to every one of their games for like 20 years or something.
Oh man,
And
and
so
where were you at the time? That's why when you were at
that's an
Acclaim.
Acclaim.
Okay.
Yeah. So Acclaim, the development department was downstairs in the basement, but it was like development slash arcade because we had every Midway arcade game. And Narc was one of the first ones that we did. And oh man, that game is such a great game.
Dude, it like I strong, very strong memories of that. Like it was shocking at the moment. There's like drug needles flying at you, and
Right.
you're
I don't know if you could do that
like,
game
what?
today. Like,
What? Like
like uh,
it was crazy.
honestly, each zone had like the themes and the characters got crazier and crazier, right? Like, so you were picking up bags of crack. That was
Yeah.
the pickups and money, and then there was like one street that was full of hookers. And if you walked over to the hookers, they would make a moan.
Yeah.
And, and the bad guys were pimps. And then there's a ganja
Drug
lab that you
dealers all
go
over the
into. The
place.
ganja lab, you're picking up these giant pot plants.
Yeah.
Um, and there's one level with like crazy clowns with knives that are coming at you with the knives.
Yeah, it was just so gonzo. And then it went from, you're kind of walking and shooting to like you're RPGing helicopters and driving a car. Like
You're
it was
driving a car, yeah.
crazy. Like that game was, yeah, shocking, amazing. As 12-year-old me was like fucking blown away by it.
And what was awesome was that it was really innovative as an arcade machine because they had actors and the actors did the animation and they videotaped it and then
Yeah.
they cut it out and that was the all the characters in the game are all real. I don't know if there's a term for that where you shoot real things and you just kind of cut them out and that's your animation.
Yeah,
It's like
compositing basically, or more or less
it's like
turning film into sprite sheet.
kind of rotoscoping maybe or something.
Well, rotoscoping would be when you draw over it, right? Like Prince of Persia did that, where he, VHS taped himself, and then I think if you watch documentaries about who's the fellow that made Prince of Persia, I forget his name.
Jordan Mechner.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. And I think they even just put paper up to the TV and like just traced it. So and then those became the sprites or the character animations.
So like a little fun fact, like that Narc Tech then that team went and made Mortal Kombat with the same tech where they
Okay.
videoed the actors,
Yeah, the
and so
NetherRealm games. That's right. Yeah, Mortal Kombat 1 was done in that way too. Yeah, interesting that I didn't know that Narc sort of preceded what happened in Mortal Kombat. That's killer.
yeah, same team. And I don't I don't put Mortal Kombat on my resume because I wasn't like officially the producer. I just like it was a group effort, right? Like there were the actual production team sat next to me, and we'd play the game. Sometimes it was like all hands on deck testing and stuff like that. And there was a arcade machine, like literally it was one of the walls of my cube was the Mortal Kombat machine.
Awesome.
So we played a lot, and the other one was Terminator 2, the arcade game,
Oh
which
yeah.
was a gun game where you shoot and the gun would vibrate. It was like, and I played that game every day. It was so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
Again,
I
also video, captured video of the Terminators, and they had models of the. It was, I mean, amazing because all pre 3D.
yeah.
You couldn't do rendering or anything. It was just like too early.
Yeah. Liu Kang was my guy in Mortal Kombat. Who did you play back in the early days?
I think I was a lot of like maybe a little of everything, really, but Sub-Zero and Scorpion. I think I like those guys a lot. And
Um,
get over here.
oh yeah, totally. So awesome. And the movie that came out recently, that was super awesome. That was fun
Yeah,
to
I
see sort of those old, because like kind of like Goro for in the beginning was, amazing for its time, but like, all right, claymation's cheesy. It's fun to see him like fully realized in CG and realistic rendering.
haven't actually seen it. I need to like kind of catch up. Like,
Check it out. I really enjoyed it. It was a good time.
yeah, I saw the original like from I don't know like 20 years ago, and it was like, I mean, it wasn't a good movie, but I loved Mortal Kombat, so
Yeah,
it
and the
worked for
soundtrack
me.
was awesome.
But yeah, I mean, we played that a lot, and like a couple of my like really good friends, like guy Dave's my best friend from high school. He'd come from Manhattan where he lived, and he would like just drive in, and we'd just hang out and play video games. Because we had like a whole arcade. There were like 20 machines.
At the office.
Yeah, so we'd just sit there and play Mortal Kombat for hours, after work, and it
Hell
was
yeah.
such a great time. He worked on Wall Street. I remember he worked at a place where he had to pay for the coffee, and then he'd walk in, and we had like there was a sign like please do not mix the hazelnut coffee with the regular coffee, and he was like, what the hell, like like
All you can
like
drink coffee.
he couldn't believe it. We had like sodas and snacks, and it's so funny. Like that was the one thing that he noticed, right? It was like, this place is insane, free video games and free hazelnut coffee.
Yeah, man, the era of putting your quarter up on the arcade cab at the liquor store.
Right, well, that's how we grew up.
That's the
Yeah.
golden era of video gaming.
In like in New York, it was like there would be like these little smoke shops, right, that sold like like bongs and pipes and rolling paper, and there'd always be like three or four arcade machines. So you'd go in and play like Dragon's Lair. That's what I
Yeah,
remember.
totally.
Um, yeah, but like I'm looking at the list. I'm trying to think what else I worked on at Acclaim. I mean, it was
Right.
like I worked on a lot of games at Acclaim. It was
Yeah.
crazy, and I did a lot of stuff that was like where they needed people to figure stuff out. I was always the guy that like would figure stuff out. So it was a lot of fun, and
Oh yeah.
I just worked like that was my whole life. Like I didn't have a social life or anything. I just I was like, I work in a building full of video games. Like, what do I need? 18-year-old me, right, was like,
Hell yeah.
I've achieved my life goals at this point. Like, I'm done.
Nothing more to aspire to.
Yeah, and it was cool. And by the way, I mean like the teams I worked with at the time were all just really fantastic, like smart people, and all the T2 stuff was done by Probe, which later became part of Acclaim, but they did a lot of great games at Probe, and they were in Croydon, which is like a suburb of London.
Okay.
And so, like 18-year-old me, they stuck me on a plane. They're like, "Hey, we need you to go to England on Monday," that kind of thing. I was like, "I don't have a passport." And they were like, "All right, don't worry, we've made arrangements. Like, drive to this office in Connecticut, and there's like a passport office in Connecticut that can make you a passport in an hour." So they made me a passport while I waited.
Whoa, that's not a thing anymore. My wife almost missed her trip to Japan because her expedited passport was late, and she ended up calling or Facebooking our mayor, Van Johnson, here in Savannah, and he contacted the senator who got involved, and she got it the day before she left for Tokyo.
Wow. She could have gone to Connecticut apparently.
Yeah, that was Plan B, I guess.
So that yeah, they were like they stuck me on a plane. I don't know that I'd ever been on a plane. And
Wow.
next thing you know, I wake up, I'm in London, and it was kind of a cool story because Greg Fishback, who ran Acclaim at the time, we had some meetings, whatever, and then he said, you don't have a return ticket. It's open ended. Whenever you're ready to come back, you call this number. It's a travel agent, and she'll book your return ticket. And I said, well, what do you mean? I'm like ready. He goes, no, no, no. Stay for at least 3 more days. Like, don't come back until you've seen the city.
Yeah, dude,
You know.
awesome.
And I
Great.
was like, what's happening here? It was kind of weird because I was by myself. So I ended up like the first night. I was like, I didn't know where to eat. I ended up eating at like a Chicago rib joint in London. So that was like, my taste of London food was ribs.
Man, you gotta get Indian food while you're there. That's the best.
Spoiler alert, I didn't.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I don't think I knew that there were Indian people, much less Indian food at that point in my life.
Right.
If you said Indian, I would be like, oh, like
Like
Native
Native.
Americans?
Yeah. I had a similar anecdote. I was working at Wild Tangent up in Seattle in like early 2000s, and we did an off-site project embedded in some company for like two. They gave us like a day's notice and like, oh, you're flying to DC, Virginia, whatever. And we were there for about 2 weeks. And on the last day, he showed up and they did the presentation. And the CEO, Alex St. John, he was, he thanked us for just doing this, on a dime. And his thanks was, he's like, all right, well, so because we appreciate what you did, we're gonna send you out on the town. It was Halloween night, and we missed Halloween back home. So he's like, we're gonna send you to downtown DC with $1,000, but the deal is you have to spend all of it tonight. So here's the dumb way that turned out. Like he wasn't, necessarily being serious. It was just a kind of a thank you thing. But like I took it seriously, so I was in line. The bar was fucking packed. So I spent almost the whole night just trying to buy drinks for like everybody. And like
Nice.
I didn't like enjoy it that much. I should have just partied and had fun.
In downtown DC, there's probably a way you could have spent that $1,000 all at once.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
So,
I don't
uh,
know.
it could have turned into a scandal, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's what Acclaim was like. Like, I mean, I could spend an hour just talking about Acclaim, but they would do things like the first year I was there, they said we're gonna have a Christmas party. Go rent a tux, like it's a black tie Christmas party, and so you had all these like Acclaim was a bunch of local like yahoos, and none of us. There was like literally like three people in the company that had actually worked in video games before, right?
Yeah.
And so they took us to this really nice place, and we had a black tie Christmas party, and like that was really cool. And they did it every year. And when you flew somewhere, which I would do, 4 or 5 times a year, they would send a limo to your house.
Fuck yeah, dude.
And it was
And
like,
you're like a very young man at the time. That's
yeah, I
pretty.
was 18. Like, I made $10 an hour. Um, the
Hell yeah.
first year I was at Acclaim, they took the whole company, including spouses, including if you had like a girlfriend, which I didn't for a few years. but to the Bahamas.
Oh man, sweet.
Like it was Club Med, right, which is like an all-inclusive resort with a lot of like singing and stuff. I think actually when people say singing Kumbaya, that literally comes from Club Med because they actually do that.
Really?
So, and then the next year we went to Jamaica,
Oh, awesome.
and they didn't pay for the pot, but somehow everybody found some. You know,
Sure. My wife and her mom went to Jamaica recently, and they had a good time.
I mean, but that's great. But
Mom was
this
very
is like
popular there.
this is in the '80s when there was no legal pot in America. There was no medicinal marijuana. There was like nothing, right? It doesn't
Right.
mean that New York wasn't full of pot, but so here we are in Jamaica, and it's just literally like in the hotel. You could just ask like the dude, like the porter, whatever, the I don't know bellman.
Yeah.
Hey, where can I score some pot? And he would like pull some out of his pocket. Like I think it was at the supermarket in Jamaica.
Yeah.
I think on the way in, the customs agent was like, "Do you have any to declare?" Or no, and he goes, "Do you need any weed?"
Get the fuck
It's
out of
like,
here.
not really, but
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, not surprising.
so here I was with like smoking a joint with the CEO of the company
Right
because it
on.
was like when in Rome.
Yeah.
Um, Acclaim also did this thing called Birthday Thursday, so it was like once a month there was an open bar at there was this English pub across the street called Canterbury's, and they would just open a tab and everybody would go and drink for whoever's birthdays it was.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, now that I think about it, we drank a lot at that company.
Really.
I think there was an excuse to drink like almost every day at that place.
There's always fun stories and anecdotes about companies that drank a lot and then all of a sudden don't anymore, and why that change in policy comes to be. I've been in the middle of. I've seen one or two of those.
Well, the CFO of the company would leave Birthday Thursday and crash his car a few times. Like he did it like 3 months in a row. And then I believe they told him to stop drinking and they took the car away.
Oh man,
Because he
yeah,
like literally like every time. And he didn't know how to drive either, right? Because he was British. And he'd come to America having
jeez.
never driven a car before.
Oh man, yeah. More responsible flavor of that at a studio that I worked at had they sort of insisted that if you got a little saucy, that you cab home and they pay for it and you get your car later, and that's probably more an HR approved policy.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah. So I mean, but it was a wild place and there was like a lot of like, literally sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah. All right.
So I left there and I went to Sony, went around the time of PlayStation 1, and that was really cool, except Sony was kind of weird. And so I got a bunch of projects that were all Sega CD, and I was like, wait, where's this PlayStation thing? Like, and they were like, oh no, we're not doing that yet. It's like, yeah, but those guys next door are. Because like we were like next door to the people like quote unquote making the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like not super excited about Sega CD. Uh, but I worked with Psygnosis, which was like a really cool
Oh,
company,
dude,
and
legendary. Out
yeah,
of London, also, right?
they were in Liverpool.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wipeout. Well, one of my favorite games.
yeah.
So
This would
cool.
have been like a little bit pre-Wipeout, but they had done a lot of cool like Amiga games and they were really digging into the Sega CD. So we did a game that was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and it was cool. I mean, it was like you'd walk around in a map and collect things and like do like kind of adventure game things, and then when you encountered a bad guy, it would go to like a Mortal Kombat like side to side fighting game,
Yeah.
and you'd like
Cool.
kick some dude's ass, and then you'd go back to like collecting, you know, like it was like like I don't know what you call it, like a game where you collect things and put them together, like almost
Like
like crafting,
crafting. Yeah.
and you made the keys, you could unlock the door, and then you'd fight like a guy with a hump or something. Actually, I don't remember. It was so long ago. I actually have no memory of that game.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Tell us. Do you have a favorite game? I mean, how do you? What is a favorite game of all time? But something that you have super fond memories of. What are you playing now?
So, one problem with the question of like favorite game is that I literally play tens of thousands of games, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
like I got to play everything, and then I'm constantly having anxiety. Like there's something like a big game everyone's talking about that I haven't played, and like honestly, I've never played any of the Zelda games since like the original NES Zelda, and it gives me like constant anxiety because like some people I know are talking about the new ones coming, and I'm like I still haven't played Breath of the Wild, but I really want to. So like favorite game, I loved XCOM. I loved all the like the original XCOM and the remakes of XCOM.
Yeah.
I really
Exactly.
liked that formula, like the kind of tactical strategy and leveling up your troops. Um, Doom, like I played a lot of the original Doom, like just for years, and um, and then there was all this stuff about how John Romero's like kind of not a nice guy, and then I met him, and I was like, he's like a super nice guy.
Yeah, I've actually heard the opposite. I've heard he's super sweet and amazing.
Yeah. And I met him, and then we went to dinner in California one year with my kid, and he was like super nice, and I apologized to him. I said, "Hey, I love Doom. Like when I like had when I was unemployed for a little while, I just played a bunch of Doom, and it like made me feel better. And like and I'm sorry for like thinking you were a jerk, like because there was all this stuff about Daikatana, right? And yeah, and I actually saw him last week at GDC, and we had all these like places where we had intersected, and we knew people, and we had people we didn't like. There was one person in particular we really both didn't like, and it was like I had a recent run-in with this person, and he told me a story, and it was just like I could talk to him for hours, you know.
Nice.
So and what am I playing now? Like I'm gonna look at my Steam library. Um, I play a lot of Vampire Survivors, which I love to death,
Yeah.
and I am determined not to like stop playing that game until I unlock all the achievements. I think I've got like 8 left.
Oh yeah.
Um, Grim Dawn is like a Diablo like game that is just so well made. I actually didn't play it for like a while, and then I started playing it again, and I realized like I was hours into my second time playing it, and I realized I think I actually finished the game the first time. But you can just keep playing. You just keep going and like fighting stuff, and I was like, now what am I gonna do?
There's kind of a mourning too, right? When you finish a game that you've really just, gotten sucked into and then you complete it and it's like what?
But there's still quests, and I
There's
think
always
that
achievements and there's already, thank God there's other shit that they put in there
yeah,
now to like keep you on the,
I'm just gonna keep
advance forward.
leveling and keep doing quests, and then there's 2 expansions I don't even have. So I guess at some point, like I'll just bite the bullet and buy the expansions.
Yeah.
Um, you know what? Let me throw one more thing out here. Um, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2 and 3.
All right, I worked on those.
So I know. So here's my thing. I will go back like once a year and replay the campaign, right? Because they're just so well done. The story, the voice acting. Um, I forget his name. But there's that one guy that's like I've seen it. Like I recognize his face because he's like a well-known actor. He's always like a military general, and he's like he's the guy that's always like giving you the orders like 2 choppers loaded for bear incoming.
Yeah.
Um, and I just get like a
Lance Henderson, I think is his name. He was in Aliens. He was the android in the Aliens movie.
it's not Lance Hendrickson.
No,
No, it's like this older. Ah, God, I can
he
picture
was
his
in one of
face.
those games.
I can picture his face, but I hear his voice, and it's like I get a tingle.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll play the campaigns, and I love Modern Warfare 3, and there's like a whole there's one level called Wolverines, and it's like you're just going through like a suburban town, clearing out
Yeah.
the Russians, and yeah, so I love that. And
That was Modern Warfare 2. I did that level.
oh, Wolverines is Modern Warfare 2. All right, fine,
Yeah,
that's fine.
Burger Town's in there.
Burger Town, yeah. So that's the guy. Like when you're in that level, the guy is the guy on the radio, and he's like, regroup at the Burger Town.
Yeah, that's what's his name? He was in 24 too, the TV
I think
show.
I think that's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget what his name is. Yeah, that was classic. Yeah, I set the tree on fire. The downed plane crash with the smoke coming off of it. I did all that. I was proud of that.
Yeah. I mean, so and the other thing is that both of those games, 2 and 3, not the first one, but 2 and 3 have a co-op mode called Spec Ops.
Yeah, super fun.
And
It's like a co-op, and they're different flavors, and there was like wave defense stuff.
yeah, so my friend Dave, sorry, Cut. You'll edit that out, right?
Yeah,
So my friend Dave, who I was saying used to play, Mortal Kombat at the office, we started playing Spec Ops, over the internet. And when Modern Warfare 2 first came out, we played through every Spec Ops mission together, and it's a unique gameplay experience because it's co-op, but each Spec Op mission is like a finely tuned scenario that
yeah,
requires two people.
yeah,
And some of them are just clearing a room, right? Like where you have a whole plan. You clear left, I'll clear right, that kind of thing. Then some of them are like one guy's in the helicopter shooting with
yeah.
the minigun,
Or,
and the other
or
guy's on the
helicopter.
ground. And you have to use voice comms, which was not really as common back then. So we would play on cell phones. We'd literally
Okay.
have my phone in my ear, and I'd be like, "Okay, go left." And then they added, like Steam added voice chat, and everybody's got voice chat now, so it's like it's not a big deal. But we probably, I would say, like every 18 months or so, I'll say, "Come on, let's just go play some Spec Ops." We'll reinstall it on Steam, and we'll just jump back in and play some missions.
Yeah, awesome. I'll give one other anecdote too. The no Russian level, which ended up getting some press. I worked on that with the designer whose name was Mohammed.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I remember when we were making it. You have to play through it like a million times to like get each little thing. I remember when he put in the like you're going down the escalator, and then all the flight times switched to like delayed, 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 delayed. Oh, man, like that was like, holy shit, that was so rad when you put that in.
Yeah, I love that level. Just because I don't know, like sometimes you just have to do things different. And I know there was a lot of controversy, and I can't imagine the conversations that must have happened at Activision. The first time somebody saw that, they probably were like, "Oh, we can't do this. Like, what the hell?"
Yeah, I'll actually tell you that it was one of the devs on the team internally who led to what ended up being the skip it dialogue box. So at the beginning of the game, like the intro credits roll, the little intro animation stuff, and then there's a dialogue that's like, at some point in this game, there will be a thing that you might not want to play. That's whatever the wording is. You can skip it and it won't affect your gameplay. Yes or no. And then when the level comes up, it does it again, confirm or deny. And the player, the it was one of the engineers who he took issue. He's like, I don't want to do this as a player. I don't want to be a part of this as a developer. So that was the sort of compromise. And another bit of it too, that we play tested different flavors of that, but yeah, it sort of landed at you have to shoot your gun. You do not have to kill anyone. But if you don't shoot your gun, like because you're a CIA plant, so they find you out.
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah, lots of little subtlety and iteration went into where that landed, but yeah, that was yeah, memorable level.
I mean, it's good. Like I said, like it's good because you have to do different things. Like every first-person shooter can't be the same, and so they do things with story and gameplay and make the player uncomfortable. Like I think it's okay. Like I think you should be uncomfortable sometimes. It's like a movie. They say, "Oh, well, people are smoking in movie and smoking is bad." It's like, well, yeah, but because those are bad people, or you know what I mean? Like that was a really bad example, but you know, sometimes people in movies are not doing good things because they're not good people. That's what I was trying to say. And
Yeah,
in games, like sometimes you can be a bad person. I mean, look,
yeah,
there's a whole game where you're the TIE fighter guy.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, like I'm proud to have, sort of played a little role in like sort of the maturing of the medium a little bit, right? Where, it's funny when I run into other adults that are not, gamers at all, and they're like, that's for kids. Well, I mean, no, this is an M-rated game. It is very specifically not for kids. And like, when you yeah, that's but it's mature in many as a media, and there's plenty of content that are for, adults with sensibilities that like, you know, war movies and stuff. This is like a
Yeah,
war movie.
yeah, and they've made a few of those too.
Yeah.
So the Call of Duty before it was Modern Warfare, right? It was like a World War II war movie, like
Yeah.
landing on the beach and all that stuff.
Here was a meta moment. We had Ridley Scott into the office at one point. There was talk about doing a Call of Duty movie. I think this was while Modern Warfare 2 was in production. And Modern Warfare 2 was like a lot of it, a lot of the scenes, if you look for it, are very directly inspired by Black Hawk Down,
Yeah, totally. I saw it.
which he was the director of. And so he came in and into the theater, and he watched, 20 minutes or so of gameplay of one of the levels that was like, pretty much from his movie.
Right.
I don't know if he made the correlation or not, but he's not a gamer, right? He's a film guy. Um, and I remember, when they sort of debriefed us afterwards, one of his questions was like, he's like, "That was amazing. That was like a 15-minute cut. Like, that's one long cut." Like, all right, but it was kind of hilarious to us that like they were talking about making a movie based on a game that was based on that
Right, based on a
movie.
well, yeah.
Like that's pretty meta.
I mean, by the way, just as an aside, Black Hawk Down, probably one of the most like intense movies I'd seen at the time. I remember walking out of the theater just like shaking from the adrenaline.
Yeah, yeah,
Like that
and
was a great. I mean, like, and not you can't just see it on your home TV. Like to see that, in Dolby Surround or on a big screen or THX, because that's how I did it back then. That was such a great experience.
yeah, yeah. And there's been other amazing, Saving Private Ryan and other ones since then.
The joke was like everybody went to see that movie. All the girls went to see it because they like Matt Damon, and then
Yeah,
they get through the first scene and they're like crying because that was not what they expected.
yeah.
Like, wait a minute,
It's
we thought Matt
hardcore.
Damon was cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Taking a lighter note, give us an anecdote. Tell us that funny stuff and shenanigans goes on all the time in game studios. Tell us about some stupid shit that's
Oh
happened
God, I mean,
where you work.
anecdotes. Oh
Not
boy,
not not too crazy, but
don't get me started. I gotta think. I gotta think for a second. Of something. Oh boy, I should have prepared for this part. He wants an anecdote. All right. Oh, I've got a Simpsons anecdote.
yeah,
Uh, so when I worked at Fox, we had all the Simpsons games, right? And so we'd watch the Simpsons every day at lunch, and we had like a whole like VHS libraries before there was like DVDs and stuff. And we'd always watch. And our favorite was Ralph Wiggum, because Ralph Wiggum would just be all these like he would make these one-liners. And there's one time where he like falls down with his diorama, and he's like, "I bent my Wookie." And that was just our favorite. We just like constantly just say Ralph Wiggum lines in meetings and stuff. So somebody goes to a meeting with Matt Greening, and they're like, "Oh, we really like this line, I bent my Wookie." And Matt gets so mad, and he's like, "I fought with the writers about that."
really.
And like he goes, "It doesn't make any sense. You can't bend a Wookiee. It's not a thing. Like here's an action figure. It doesn't bend. Like you'd break it. Like I fought with them. They made me do it because it's funny. And like don't bring that up again." And our boss was this guy Paul, and Paul was like, "Don't upset Matt. Like come on, guys. Like don't ever mention that to him again. Like don't even mention anything to him. Like whatever."
We're putting it in the game.
It's like a month later, we're in Toys R Us. We're in the toys section, and there's Simpsons toys, or there's like Star Wars toys, and there's literally this thing that says "bendable Wookie," And we're like, oh, we're buying that. So we buy like three of them. And it was, remember they had those toys where there's like a wire inside the toy so you could bend it and it would hold its shape?
Yeah, yeah, the Elastic Man my brother had.
So, a couple of weeks later, we go to a meeting with Matt. And, my friend Gary's got the Wookiee like in his pocket, right? And he's like, I'm going to show him, I'm going to show him. And Paul's like, don't show him, don't show him. He's like, do not mention Wookiees. And, Gary whips it out and he's like, hey, look, Matt, it's a bendable Wookiee. And Matt was really like he really liked the merchandise, and what Matt loved was all the fake merchandise. So
Okay.
he'd go down to Mexico
Oh,
and he'd buy
God.
like all the like fake Simpsons merchandise they'd sell like in Tijuana, and I mean it was great because it was so bad. It was like Homer Simpson, but like as drawn by a child. That kind of
Yeah.
weird merchandise. So he got all excited and he was like, "Oh my God, they were right. You really can bend a Wookiee." He was like, "This is amazing." He's like, "Can I keep this? Like, this is awesome." Meanwhile, Paul, the boss guy, was like mortified. He was like, "No, my God, no, he's gonna hate us." But no, but Matt was like super excited about the bendable Wookiee.
Awesome.
So it was. I mean, it was just like there was a time when I wasn't like in charge of anything and I didn't have to worry about money and stuff. Where making games is just super fun, And we just would. It was just we'd just do so many fun things, meet fun people, and you know, we met Ice T at the whatever it was called CES show,
Yeah.
and like I walked up to him. We were in the porn section, right? CES had a whole. There was a porn show next to the video game
Yeah,
show,
that's right. Yeah, every
and your
year that
ba-
they were at the same time.
and somehow your badge worked for both. Like,
Really?
and I went in there. I'm just like walking around, and there's Ice T, and I was like, "Hey, Ice T." And he goes, "Oh, Fox Interactive." He goes, "I've been trying to meet with you guys." And I'm like, "All right, here's my card. Come on in, like whatever." And he was like super cool. And he came in and he pitched us. He brought in a whole deck, and he pitched us as like an arcade machine that was a music machine, and it had a
Okay.
guitar and it had a DJ thing that you would like do all these things, and it was some kind of a video game. And we like laughed at him. We're like, "That's the craziest thing ever." And we laughed at him. He was
Billion
fucking
dollar idea.
he was pitching us fucking Guitar Hero like in 1991 or something,
Man.
Uh, and that was like it was Guitar Hero and DJ Hero like all in one, like,
Wow.
and it was probably like a pretty good idea. Ice T.
Man.
Um, we also had Sandra Bullock's dad came in.
Okay.
So Sandra Bullock apparently was the number one like searched celebrity on the as of then very small internet,
Right.
and she did a lot of movies for Fox. So Fox was like really about like keeping the talent happy. They didn't give a shit about the video games, right? They would literally tell us, "Go make a game. We don't care if it makes any money, but because the celebrity wants to make a game, you have to do it." And so they were like, "Sandra Bullock's dad wants to come in and pitch something to you,
Okay.
and we don't care what it is. You're gonna do
We're
it.
doing it.
Whatever.
My
Like you got
dad
to
pitched
keep,
me a game once too.
the star of speed, right? Wants
Yeah.
a She gets it." So dad comes in. It wasn't a game. It was like his pitch was repair manuals for military vehicles on a computer. And that was his whole pitch. And we were just like, wow, wow, we can't do this. So I think
Somehow.
we didn't do it. Like, but I think there was like people had to think about it for a couple of minutes before we could like pass on it because we were really like supposed to do it, whatever it was.
Yeah, my dad pitched me in a game that was a philosophy that he was studying at the time, and sort of demonstrating the benefits of this philosophy. I'm like, oh no.
Was it Scientology?
No, no, it wasn't. It's not
Okay.
one with a name that you would recognize, but
All right. Scientology's
um
the only one I know, so.
yeah. Let's switch gears again. Let's talk about most of your career. You have served as a producer. You are a CEO now. Let's talk about producers in the games industry. What makes a good producer? What are some things that producers get wrong? What are like important lessons you've learned in time as a producer?
I wish I knew. I mean, honestly, if you could tell me, I'd be very happy. No, I'm joking, kind of. Well, maybe I don't know. I mean, like I worked as a producer on the publishing side, which is actually a fairly easy job. Because you just hire a team and then you just like watch what they're doing, and I mean, if you have a good team, it's really easy work because you're really just supporting them with like, hey, what do you need from me, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um, and I think for me personally, like I just had a really good eye for games, and I knew I could sit in a meeting and people would pitch new things like, hey, let's do this thing that's never been done before, and I think I had a decent intuition where sometimes I could just say, look, that's not going to work. you know. And I think a lot of times that's what I would do. I would just literally just, I'd have one or two things I was like, I really don't want to do that, but I really want to do this. And, trying to convince the team, trying to convince the team to do it without having to say, well, you have to do it because I'm paying for it, right? That would be a
yeah.
last resort, which I did a few times, and doesn't go over well at all, for sure. Like, nobody likes that. Um, and, I mean, a lot of times it's like, on that side at least, just coming up with the idea, it's like, at Acclaim, it would be like, here's this license, what do we do with it? And, I don't know if people realize, but, a lot of games are derivative. So,
Sure.
a lot of times it was just like, what game are we going to rip off? It's Homer Simpson in, Crazy Taxi. That one wasn't my idea. But, so, a lot of times, especially at a place like Acclaim, it was just like, what game idea can we pair with this license? Um, and then at some point when I went to Activision in 1997, I crossed over to like internal producer, leading an internal team,
What games were you on at
a,
Activision?
a Battlezone.
Battlezone. Yeah, love that game.
So
Played that.
Battlezone was not Battlezone. It was a prototype that had a name that I don't remember. Badlands, I think it was called, something like that.
Okay.
That may not be it, but that sounds familiar. And it was like these hovering vehicles that looked like World War II or like Cold War era fighters. Like remember like when we had like I think it was like an F-86 and it was silvered,
Uh-huh.
but it had like stars and bars on it. And so we had these things that hovered, and really it was like a giant tech demo, where they had basically built the hovering tech and they were flying the vehicles around, going, okay, yeah, this kind of works. That all the engine stuff was all from I-76, which was like 70s muscle car racing game, and we adapted all that. And then there was this idea that you were going to do real-time strategy stuff. So we had basically just built this simple system that used like the number keys on your keyboard to go through menus and say build here, build what, build this thing. And then we also, the other kind of innovative thing at the time was the ground cursor. So you had a cursor that would like move along the ground to pick the spot you wanted to put something.
Yeah, yeah.
So I came in when a lot of that basic stuff was done, and then we were kind of like moving into full production. But I was an external producer, and honestly, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And the only like I don't think I contributed anything to that project other than like I generated the list of credits and I bothered QA a lot. Um, but what I did do was it was like a year long masterclass in producering. So when the game was done and shipped, I was like, oh, all right, okay, I kind of know how to do that now. It was like, and I always say, if you want to learn something new, have someone pay you to do it.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and Activision did, and I feel bad, and I've apologized to a few people on the team occasionally, like, hey, they hired me to this job that like they shouldn't have hired me, like that was really dumb of them. Like they like nobody ever said to me, oh, by the way, like external producers are a totally different job. Like, can you do this? And I
Yeah,
was
it
like,
is.
I probably should have said no, I can't. But for me, career-wise, I learned a lot, and Activision knew how to make games. Like they really understood the process, and they had, and they gave me a good team, and there's people on the team that I still talk to that are super talented, and so I love that game. It was a great experience. It was like a really highly rated game that looks really good on my resume. And 15 years later, Rebellion buys it, and they buy the name from Atari at a like auction, and then they go to Activision somehow and they buy the rights to the code, and they come to me and say, hey, we know you worked on this. Can you help us like re-release it? And the conversation started as like, can we just get it onto Steam? And then I said, well, what if we like go and swap out all the art? Like
Yeah,
there were no
remasters.
remasters at that. Like no one had done a remaster. Like there was no
Huh.
such thing. And
Interesting.
I said, yeah, what if we just go through and like swap out all the art? And they were like, okay, sure. And it was a tricky project. I had a guy who was working on it who wasn't like really delivering, but the basic idea was to swap in a new renderer that was a modern, Battlezone was single texture, no shaders, right? It was just like
Yeah,
low
it was
poly models with textures.
very one of the very early 3D games, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was like the first, maybe like second generation of 3D games. Like it was textured
Yeah.
and really low poly, vehicles like 300 polygons per tank, kind of thing, with textures that were like 256 by 256. It's
Yeah.
like really small. And then, so eventually we got to a point where we remodeled all the tanks in China, like 10,000 polys per tank, like really smooth, beautiful tanks. Retextured everything from scratch with this, but we used the original textures as a guideline, so everything looked the same. And we redid the terrain, and we did all these like fixed bugs that like QA had probably found 15 years ago and never got fixed. And we had a guy on the team who had worked on the original team who had been updating the engine for 15 years, and he kept releasing patches.
Oh shit.
He was
Really?
like this guy that like didn't realize he didn't work there anymore. Um,
Internally or just like kind of
no, he worked
man,
somewhere
man
else, and
mod something.
yeah, he loved the game and he just kept fixing stuff. And so he helped us out as a consultant, and he fixed some bugs and helped us with some of the, there was some like tools we had to reverse engineer. There's a guy named Rich Whitehouse who writes this tool called Gnosis, and
Okay.
that has all these plugins for different games. So you can take a model from some game, run it through this thing, and it spits out like an FBX.
Oh,
So
cool.
if you want to do modding, you can use this app that he wrote, and he keeps adding plugins for different games. So we
Yeah.
went to him and we paid him, and he wrote a plugin for the Battlezone model, so we could take the old models and turn them into FBXs, and then upres them and put them back into the game.
Very cool.
That
And
was fun.
I think, for those that don't know, Battlezone, the original Battlezone was an arcade stand up with vector graphics, right?
Yeah,
And then the early one that you guys did was sort of derived from that, but added a bunch of new gameplay, full 3D rendering. The RTS stuff I thought was phenomenal. I loved that game. I played it quite a bit.
yeah. So quick backstory, like I don't know, we were about like a year into development, and marketing came to us and said, "Hey, we just picked up like the asteroids and Battlezone licenses. Would you like to call this Battlezone? Like it's a tank. That's a tank. Like."
Yeah.
And actually, we said no. And
Huh.
marketing was like really insistent. Like we really wanted to have a marketing hook.
Yeah.
And so we said okay, and then we ended up making the tanks more angular, and then we added the mini map, which looked kind of like the mini map in Battlezone. And there was something in there were two or three other things that we added that were kind of reminiscent of the arcade game. And then the trailer or the intro movie starts with the arcade Battlezone in wireframe, and at some point the
Yeah.
wireframes turn into the full 3D.
Awesome.
And but really, it had nothing to do with the arcade game. Like it was just like a license slap, you
Yeah.
know.
I mean,
Um,
but for the better. That made it more memorable, probably, because
yeah,
nostalgia for it.
and it's a good name, Battlezone.
Yeah.
So that game had massive acclaim, and PC Gamer put it on the cover, 5 out of 5, 5 stars, and it didn't sell shit.
Yeah. I bought
And
it.
there was a huge fan base. Like the fans love it. And like I said, 15 years later, I had 20 beta testers that were all people that had been playing the game already that were huge fans, and they knew how some of the systems worked. Like they helped us with scripting stuff because they knew it already, because these guys were making mods and making their own tanks and stuff like that. And so we had a bunch of help from the community, really, which was kind of cool.
Very awesome. I've got one of those under my belt too, where a very old game still kicking today. The Shadowrun FPS that I worked on in 2007 still has tournaments going for it. I just
I don't
found it.
I don't know if
on
I've ever played that.
PS4.
Shadowrun.
Oh, it's super good. It was ahead of its time. It was kind of like, Overwatch probably took a lot of cues from it. A lot of abilities and flying and teleporting.
I remember Shadowrun. There was like a Super Nintendo Shadowrun that was like an RPG, and then there's one that I think Harebrained did, 3 or 4 years ago. That's a like an XCOM, tactical. I love it.
Yeah.
Actually, I played it a bit. It's sad because I got to a point where like I got to a room and I wasn't powerful enough, and I couldn't like there was no way to back up, and I kind of got stuck, which is something I hate in a game like that, where I was stuck.
Yeah.
I couldn't proceed, and I always think I'm going to go back and like start over, but who has time?
Yeah. And yeah, the Hairburning guys, they did Shadowrun Daggerfall was one of their more recent. I think they did two or three, and then they just showed a game, I think, over GDC this last week. Lamplighters, I think is the name of it. Looks pretty cool.
I mean, those guys do great stuff. They also did was there like a Mech Warrior like turn
So
based?
well, the Hairbrain Scheme guys go back to FASA Interactive, which is where I worked with them on Shadowrun. They did Mech Assault, I think, which was the first Xbox 360, Xbox Live like multiplayer game. That was
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. That was like an arcadey Mech Warrior game, right?
yeah,
And sorry, can we cut for a second?
sure. And we're just about out of time too.
I really need to get a red light outside my door.
Yeah.
Like my dream is, and I'm sure it exists, is like a red light with a button, and I can just press the button on my desk and make the light right up that says,
um,
"Please don't come in here with trivial nonsense."
I'm supposed to switch to another interview right now. Let me
Oh, is our time
ping.
up already?
Yeah, yeah, let me see if it's okay if I punt the next one a little bit later. I'm gonna put a little mark in here for that we're intermissioning. Okay, he said take your time. Cool. All right, ready?
I was born ready. Shit, what was I talking about?
Of course. I don't know, Shadowrun, Hairbranding Scheme, Mecha Assault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we
Um,
rolling?
yeah, it never stops. But I can just add
Oh,
it.
well, and you just mentioning Mech Warrior, and it reminded me that at Activision when I got there, everyone would talk about Mech 2 as the
Oh
game
man,
that basically saved Activision.
I
And
love that game. I think my buddy Jack Mamias was lead designer on that. I think.
I think he might have come like maybe right after that, but Jack and I like he sat around the corner from me, and I think he was the lead designer on Heavy Gear,
Okay, okay, he
which
was
was
on one of
like
the
mech
Mac
with
Warriors.
roller skates or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I remember Heavy Gear. Yeah.
I think it
Um,
must have been like it was an RPG or like a tabletop or something. But so they were mechs, but they could go into some kind of like wheeled mode where they could go faster.
okay.
So Activision did a couple of Heavy Gear games, but MechWarrior 2 is funny. I mean, yeah, so it made a lot of money at a time when Activision was really, really like close to bankruptcy,
Oh man.
and so everyone acknowledged that that game basically saved the company and funded everything that they did, for the next like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
You couldn't buy a sound card, a video card, or a joystick without
Yeah.
getting a free copy of Mech 2 for
Yeah.
like 3 years, and they
That
made
bundle stuff, baby.
they had a whole department. Uh, there was this guy, I think his name was Brad Crystal, who did all those bundle deals, and they would
Okay.
do a deal like with a video card, and was like 1 million video cards, at $1.50 a pop, and that was a huge business. But the funny thing is, for years after, you'd run into people that worked at Activision at that time, and they all worked on Mech 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like whoever you'd meet, wherever they were, they always like, oh yeah, I worked on Mech 2. It was like, if you counted all the people you'd meet who said they worked on Mech 2, there was like 300 people on that team. They weren't really. I think there were like 12 people on the team.
Yeah.
But I heard many stories, and the designer of Mech 2 was a guy named Zach Norman. And Zach also, he went from there to design I-76, which was a
Okay.
brilliant game. And he would tell these stories, and it was amazing. It was just like that game should not have happened. And like they were like, at some point, I think the story was that they got canceled, and the team came in over the weekend and like kamikazed a demo together, and then on Monday morning, like it was this amazing thing, and then the game continued, and um,
Yeah.
it was just, and it was a great game. Like, I want to remaster, having remastered Battlezone, and now I like know how to do it. Right? It was like, again, Battlezone was a lesson. I want to remaster Mech 2, and I have the buddy of mine has all the code and assets, and it's the
Oh
same
wow.
engine that Battlezone used, right? So we have all this familiarity with the engine,
Interesting. I didn't know.
and one of these days I'm going to figure out who owns that. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know who owns it anymore. But that would be. It was just such a good game. Like the missions and the story was just so good. Anyway,
Yeah. I don't know that one. I haven't played it.
Mech
Um.
2.
What? Oh no, I thought you were talking I-75. But yeah, I
Oh,
love
I-76.
I-76.
And
Mech.
the sequel was called I-82.
Oh,
And so it was like they were. It was I-76 was like a parody of all those like '70s cop shows,
okay.
like Starsky and Hutch. And then I-82 was like '80s Miami Vice, like Ferraris and
Nice.
DeLoreans. You couldn't play them today, but it was the characters and the story was A plus.
Awesome. We're running a little low on time, so let's get to the last topic, which is let's just get a little inspirational. Talk about the future of gaming. What are you excited about for what you think might be possible in games that we can't do now? Um, yeah, just be like project into the future a little bit. Where are we headed with all this?
The future of gaming is Stadia. Um,
Just
there's no.
NFTs and blockchain, right?
Uh, I worked on a project that was like a little bit in trouble, and I was asked to come in and help out, and the team was so focused on the Stadia version. After Stadia had been canceled, they were still commits to the Stadia code base, and they hadn't done PS4 yet, but they were like literally fixing bugs in the Stadia version. And every
Oh
time I saw a
no.
Stadia commit, I was like, "What is going on here?" Um, it was like, "What is this? The crazy person doing?" Stadia. But like the future, I'll tell you what I'm really, really excited about right now is AI.
Yeah,
And you know, there's this thing in life, like anytime you say something can't happen or can't work or that'll never be a thing, it's like
yeah,
3 minutes later it's a thing, like self-driving cars, that'll never be a thing. Or I remember a friend of mine saying, "Oh, someday we won't have CDs, music will just be on computer chips." And I was like, "That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. Like that will never happen." And I think we are now at a point where AI is about to like just explode in ways that we never imagined. And I
yeah,
play with Midjourney and I love it. And I try to come up with goofy things, and it makes really neat art. And that's amazing for me because I can't draw. And, so I can sit and make abstract album covers for a music game I'm working on, or
yeah.
I can make just cool concept art like for like a game with dragons, right? I can just be like sit there. I can sit all day and just make images of dragons, and it's pretty neat. The real cool stuff though is Chat GPT, and
Yeah.
um, I've used it just for like goofy stuff. Like I need to convert some recipe units like teaspoons into cups or something like that. And so to me, in that way, it's like super powerful. But I've already seen people on my team have like fed code into it
Yeah.
and said, find the bug in this code, and it does. And I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
So we're now in the process of building like a rig where we can take, obviously one piece of code, one little block of code is no big deal, but we're going to try to basically get to a point where we can feed like a whole code base of a game, file by file into ChatGPT and basically have it find bugs. And we believe
That is
today
crazy.
that's possible. But
Wow.
but we're on ChatGPT 4, right, which costs like $10 a month. 5 will probably be way better. And like imagine where we are in a year. Like in a year from now it'll be like 7 or 8. And we are at that point where the stuff you see in movies and TV, talking to the Star Trek computer is like we're gonna go past that, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm kind of imagining an interface. Right now, it's kind of not interconnected tools, ChatGPT and Midjourney and everything. I'm kind of imagining like dashboards where you've got sort of Alexa style voice recognition in there, and like the role you are playing as a creator is more of like expressing ideas and curation. I'm just talking to the thing, like I'm interviewing you now. Like, what if I had a fucking landscape with I want a zone that's like cloud city stuff over here, and like we've already got text, code, and images. Three models are already sort of incoming. There's tech that does that already. Animation tools to like do world building procedurally, like dominoes are going to fall really fast here, and
I,
there's scary bits, there's ethical concerns, but I'm kind of excited for what it will empower people to do, like with
those
just
dominoes are going to fall a lot faster than we think, right? It's like even just seeing from Midjourney to GPT, and like the first version of GPT we used would lie all the time, right? Like we asked it to give us like, can you give us a library that takes this rendering library and exposes it to C sharp, whatever, and it gave us a GitHub link that didn't exist, right? It made
yeah.
it up. Completely just the computer lied to me. Okay. Um, Hi, which one of you assholes taught the computer how to lie? Like that was really dumb. But then, moving to like, the next version, now we're, at 4, we have it writing code that is like production code. Like, it's something that I took. My kid is 14, she's taking Python in high school, and I was like, hey, those like times you've come to me with a bug, like, and you couldn't figure it out. Like, I'm going to teach you how to ask the AI to fix your bug for you, and it's not cheating because that's what you're going to do at work, right? Like at
Yeah.
work, why would you write code if the AI can write it for you, And so I do think in 5 years, you will say, I want a turn-based shooter like XCOM, but the theme is like Bloods versus Crips, and it's cartoony, and there's a story, and the AI will say, do you want me to write the story, or you want to write the story? I would say, well, it's like two guys named like Mike and Dave, and they're, driving, they're driving Aston Martins around LA, like, and it'll be like, okay, hold on, let me flesh that out. I'll be like,
I'm
here's your
excited to play this
story.
game.
You'll say, I approve the story, and it'll be like, okay, here's your game. And like within 5 minutes, you'll be playing the game that the AI made for you in real time.
Crazy,
You know,
crazy.
I know it sounds insane, but we're there in 5 years.
Yeah, it's going to go real fast. Here's a byproduct of that wonder that I have is I wonder if like the underlying skills will atrophy in society. Like if people are just telling the thing to make the stuff, people's strengths in like understanding code and functions and variables and how to do computer science itself will become weaker over time because like it's just being offloaded.
I
People are
mean,
gonna have less practice at it.
yeah, probably. I mean, I think I've seen this in the science fiction book a few times, or in a movie. There must be some movie where like we'll get to a point. Oh wait, that was Idiocracy. We'll get to a point where we don't know what to feed the plants, right? Like,
Right.
just like, but I think you're right. I think like
It's what plants crave.
I think the AI will get so good at code that we won't need to code anymore, and the AI will be our coders, you know? So, yeah, that's a little bit scary, but you're probably right. Like, at some point, we'll have this global AI system, you know, Chat GPT 99 or something, and like no one will have to code anymore. And the AI will do it for us. And the answer is 42.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mike Arkin, for spending some time with me today. This was a blast. I always love chatting with you. It was good to see you at GDC. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, you too, anytime.
And to wrap it up, this is Architects of Imagination. Thanks to our executive producer, Martika Ibarra. Thanks to our engineer and editor, Alex. We'll see you guys next time.